Draco Malfoy and the Depths of the Mind by Draco. We'll hear about this. Chapter 5. The more extreme version of a secret book club. For the next couple of days, as if to taunt Draco, Umbridge seemed to be everywhere, inspecting Snape's class in their presence, as well as charms and arithmancy. As if his detentions every night weren't enough exposure to the old hag already, Draco had to suffer through her company at least once a day in a class not taught by her throughout the following week. The teachers, quite understandably, were in a mood on a scale from irate to outright aggressive, varying their behavior towards the new High Inquisitor between frozen politeness and utter snapping. Draco was quite impressed, actually, that she made it out of Snape's class alive, as his head of house seemed to have been running particularly low on patience throughout her little visit. More miraculous, even, was that Harry actually kept his temper with Umbridge in her own lessons. Draco was unsure of how he did it, since he was not present in defense classes with the Gryffindors, but from what he was hearing from Hermione, he must be stubbornly keeping his mouth shut and his eyes on his book.
"You really did a number on him,"
Hermione told him as they took their places in the Ancient Runes classroom on Friday.
"He's extremely careful to stay out of trouble. The influence you have on him is quite something."
"Good to know someone will learn a lesson from my scars," Draco said grimly, making a fist. The words on the back of his hand were not quite legible yet. Umbridge would be disappointed.
"Well," Hermione said tentatively, "there's actually something I wanted to talk to you about, or better, something I want you to convince Harry of."
"Oh?" Draco asked, raising an eyebrow. "This better be good, Hermione, or I won't even bother." Hermione threw a furtive look around, making sure that no one was paying any attention to them and that class wasn't about to start anytime soon, and that, more than anything else, intrigued Draco. When she turned back to him, his bushy-haired friend was whispering,
"It's about Umbridge and her not teaching us any defensive magic."
"Which is obviously a problem," Draco agreed. "But what do you want Harry to do about it?"
"Well," Hermione said slowly, "Harry knows a lot more defensive magic than most of us, and he has a lot more hands-on experience than anyone else our age."
Draco stared at her, his mind slowly catching on to what she was trying to say. "You want Harry to teach us defense against the dark arts behind Umbridge's back," Draco muttered.
"Well, yes," Hermione shrugged. "I think he'd be good at it, but Harry isn't too thrilled with the idea."
"Color me surprised," Draco deadpanned.
"He rejects the idea that he's special in any way," she sighed. "He said he got out of all these dangerous situations on the last couple of years through luck, not skill, and then he's got nothing to teach anyone. But you and I both know that's not true."
"We do," Draco agreed. "He's a powerful wizard, even if he doesn't see it."
"Exactly, and a lot of people would profit from his expertise. Just think of all the spells he learned for the third task of the Triwizard Tournament alone."
"Hold on for a minute, though," Draco frowned. "Who are we talking about here? Are we talking you, me, Harry, Weasley, or anyone else?"
"Well,"
Hermione said, looking squeamish,
"I really think we should give everyone who wants to learn an opportunity."
"Hermione, you can't trust people. What if anyone rats us out?"
"There are precautions."
"So you want to help people, but you also want to threaten them in case they talk?"
"Do you have to be so horrible?"
"I'm a Slytherin. We're not known for our kindness." Hermione glared at him. Draco glared back. "I'm serious, Hermione," Draco continued. "If you want me to convince Harry, you have to convince me first that this is a good idea. The boy is loath to get into trouble at the moment, and I quite like that. I'm not sure I'm motivated to change that for a couple of people who might give us away."
"We won't ask people who we can't trust," Hermione promised. "People like Ginny, Fred, George, Lee, Neville. People like them."
"All right," Draco frowned. "Okay, people like them, I can see. Everyone else, I don't trust farther than a hex can throw them. I'm serious, Hermione. Be careful who you involve in this. If you want to form a secret study group of sorts, limited numbers are of crucial importance."
"Understood," Hermione nodded. "I'll make sure to keep the numbers small, should you get Harry to agree. Does that mean you'll try, then?"
Draco sighed, looking towards the front of the class, where Professor Babbling had just entered through her office and dropped her papers onto the desk. He thought of the alliance his father had with the Dark Lord and the direct danger his family was in. He thought of the looming war ahead and of all the students at Hogwarts unable to defend themselves if pressed. He thought of Harry, his forehead pressed against Draco's shoulder, telling him how he felt out of place ever since he'd returned to school. "All right," he whispered to Hermione just as Professor Babbling was opening the class. "I'll do it." Hermione was beaming at him. "Hermione put you up to this," Harry groaned a day later, glowering at him half-heartedly. They were sitting outside, enjoying what might very well be the last feelers of summer, their books spread between them. Hermione had swept Weasley off to the Gryffindor common room a couple of minutes ago, giving Draco the opportunity to speak to Harry privately, and naturally she couldn't have been more obvious in her setup. Sometimes she seriously underestimated her friend's deductive abilities. "I told her I'd think about it." "And I told her I'd talk to you about it," Draco chuckled. "So maybe that will help you think. Or don't you want my opinion?" "Don't do this," Harry moaned. "Prat. That's not what I meant." "Good to hear," Draco smiled. "Now that you're listening, let me tell you why I think it's a good idea." Harry just looked at him, eyes wary, but protests non-forthcoming, which meant he was allowed to continue. "Reason 1. While not the most important, I still think this is a good one. Imagine the face of the old hag if we all pass our practical owl portions with flying colors without her having ever seen us lift the wand. In your toad-like face, bitch." Harry snorted, but did not comment. Draco continued. "Reason 2, he said, his tone turning more serious. As much as I'd like to go with the whole fun underground rebellion group idea, the situation is actually dire. You know it, and I know it. War is around the corner, and my father will ask me to choose a side. I will need to be able to defend myself, and I won't be the only one, Harry. I know Hermione and Weasley feel the same way. We need to learn how to defend ourselves, and if the appointed teachers aren't doing it..." He let the sentence hang in the air. Harry was staring at him, green eyes burning with emotion, and his fingers reached out to find Draco's. "But I'm not a teacher, Draco," Harry whispered. "I'm just me." "That's enough, Harry," Draco stressed. "All the knowledge we, in some cases, have gathered until now is more than enough. And in any case, this is a study group. We can work together on new knowledge. You don't need to be perfect. No one expects you to be. But for our purposes, you're exactly what we need. Believe me." Harry sighed, closing his eyes. Then he shrugged. "Fine," he said, opening them again and locking gazes with Draco. "If you say so, I'll do it. Just the 3 of you, then." "Well," Draco chuckled darkly, "here's the thing. Hermione's got other plans." "Does she?" Harry said flatly. "She says everyone who wants to learn should be given the opportunity." Draco rolled his eyes. "She promised me that she'll only ask people we could trust, or I wouldn't have agreed." "Half the school thinks I'm a lunatic," Harry pointed out. "Who would want to take lessons from me?" "The other half?" Draco joked. "I guess." "Very funny." "Relax, Harry. I don't like the idea of a bigger group either. But we have to trust Hermione to choose the right people, and then properly threaten them into not telling anyone about what we are doing." "That sounds twisted." Harry frowned. "Well," Draco shrugged. "Welcome to the world of war, Harry. You'd better get used to twisted real fast." They left it to Hermione to organize a meeting with a couple of interested people for their first Hogsmeade weekend. As tempted as Draco was to prod, he kept his nose out of it, knowing that his inquiries would most likely end in a vehement confrontation that Draco was loath to undertake. He felt more than a little squeamish at the idea of involving people, but then again, he had never exactly been the social type. His list of friends included Hermione, Harry, Victor, and a couple of chosen Weasleys. Maybe. There were plenty of people he was friendly with, like Longbottom or Lovegood, but it would be a stretch to call them his friends, and Draco drew a clear line where it was due. So maybe it was natural that he was less inclined to trust others. Or maybe it was just that Gryffindors were horrible do-gooders who didn't stop to think for a moment when they wanted to make an idea happen. One of the two. Nevertheless, they made their way out to the village in their usual constellation on Saturday morning after some strange run-in with Filch, who seemed to have been checking Harry for dung bombs, which prompted Harry to tell them about an incident that had apparently occurred recently in the owlery, where Filch had demanded to see Harry's letter because he suspected it to be an order for said banned objects.
He said he was tipped off you were ordering dung bombs. But who tipped him off?
Hermione asked, looking as intrigued as Draco felt. I don't know. Harry shrugged. Maybe not. He'd think it was a laugh. You're naive, Harry. Draco frowned. This wasn't not. Someone was trying to have a look at your correspondence, and I can only think of one person with a motive. Harry turned to look at Draco so fast that it was a miracle he didn't twist his neck. You think Filch was trying to spy on me? Not Filch. Draco shook his head. Filch was only the messenger. He was coerced. No, I think it was Umbridge. Harry stared at him, mouth open. Bloody hell, whispered Weasley. Please tell me he's overreacting, Hermione.
I don't think he is,
Hermione said grimly.
I think this is exactly what happened. You have to be careful, Harry. The letter you sent that day, was it for serious?
Yes, Harry nodded, gulping. Then that was a really close call, Draco sighed. Even if you properly coded the letter, having it intercepted by Umbridge would have led to uncomfortable questions.
Indeed,
Hermione agreed.
But now that we know what she is trying to do, we just have to take extra precautions to make sure she finds absolutely nothing.
Draco threw a sideways glance at Harry. As much as Harry had tried to stay out of trouble lately, and had managed admirably so, he had never been one for extra precautions and extreme care. This year proved to be more of an adventure every day. Where are we going anyway? Harry asked, effectively changing the subject. The 3 broomsticks.
Oh, no. Hermione shook her head. No, it's always packed and really noisy. I've told the others to meet us in the Hog's Head.
Wait! Draco interrupted her, coming to a sudden halt and staring at her incredulously. You scheduled our secret meeting in a dodgy old pub where no one ever goes, and anyone could listen in on us.
No one that matters will be there, Draco,
Hermione argued impatiently. How do you know that? Draco demanded. We just established Umbridge is after Harry. How do we know she didn't hire anyone to follow after him? This pub is a terrible idea, Hermione.
Well, we already asked everyone again,
Hermione pointed out.
It's too late to change plans now. Next time, instead of complaining all the time, why don't you just get more involved from the start?
You know what? Draco rolled his eyes and started walking again. That's exactly what I'll do. The Hog's Head? Honestly. The Hog's Head was a shabby little pub at the other end of Hogsmeade, one where no one sane ever went because it was dirty and unhygienic, and Draco refused to drink anything from the glass that was offered to them. Instead, he drank his butterbeer directly from the bottle, looking around suspiciously at all the cloaked people sitting at the tables across the pub. The bartender was taking them in just as suspiciously as if he knew that Hogwarts students coming up here would be up to no good. Well, he wasn't wrong. This is a spectacularly horrible idea, Draco repeated under his breath. I'm telling you, we'll get busted.
So what?
Hermione rolled her eyes.
Draco, I double and triple checked the school rules. We're not out of bounds. Study groups and homework groups are definitely allowed. I just don't think it's a good idea if we parade what we're doing.
Hermione, this is not a homework group. Draco rolled his eyes. This is the Ministry's worst nightmare coming true. We are learning to defend ourselves, and in Umbridge's eyes, we're building our little student army against Fudge right under her nose, so if she finds out, there will be hell to pay. She didn't answer, and they sipped their butterbeers in silence. Draco saw Harry and Weasley exchange uncertain looks. He imagined they weren't used to Draco and Hermione bickering like that in front of them. So, Harry asked, who did you say was supposed to be meeting us?
Just a couple of people.
Hermione shrugged, far too blasé for Draco's liking. He really regretted not getting more involved now.
I told them to be here about now,
she added, checking her watch.
And I'm sure they all know where it is. And look, this might be them now.
The door opened, and in came a string of people so large that Draco felt the very real urge to hit Hermione with a hex. It started out simply enough with Longbottom, Thomas, Brown, and the Patils, but then continued on to Cho Chang, which unsettled Draco for more than one reason, and then moved on to other Gryffindors who were decidedly not from their year, and Hufflepuffs who weren't, and Ravenclaws who he hadn't even met, and at some point Draco turned to Hermione, livid. "Limited numbers, we said," he hissed under his breath. "A couple of people! Are you insane, Granger?" Harry, on Hermione's other side, looked just as distressed as Draco, and nodded vehemently in support of his accusations. Hermione, though, seemed pleased by the turnout, and quite unconcerned.
"Yes, well, the idea seemed quite popular."
She half nodded, half shrugged.
"Ron, do you want to pull up some more chairs?"
Draco and Harry locked eyes, communicating their unhappiness without words. Draco then took a look around, seeing that they were drawing more than a few looks to themselves, both by the bartender and the other customers. Draco cursed under his breath. He was going to murder Hermione! Fred Weasley ordered a round of butterbeers for everyone, and they all got settled. Harry, quite unnecessarily, moved places to sit next to Draco. "Is it too late to run?" he asked under his breath, making Draco smile. "I'm afraid so," he sighed. "We can just hope to Merlin this will have no consequences, and never let Hermione plan anything on her own again." "You know this is a resolution we will never put into action, right?" Harry pointed out with a snort. "Right now, I'm angry enough to believe it," Draco assured him. "Fair enough," Harry muttered darkly when people were sitting down to face him, as if expecting him to jump into a speech at any moment. He leaned over to speak to Hermione. "What have you been telling people?" he hissed. "What are they expecting?"
"I've told you they just want to hear what you've got to say,"
Hermione said soothingly, but at seeing Harry's face, she added hastily,
"You don't have to say anything yet. I'll speak to them first."
Longbottom took the seat across from them then, greeting them cheerfully, and then Chang and her friend sat down as well. She smiled at Harry as she did, and Draco couldn't help but take note of the way Harry froze and flushed at the simple contact. It felt like a pinnacle of ice piercing Draco's heart, and suddenly he was furious with Chang. Dickory hadn't even been dead for 4 months, and here she was, already messing around with Harry's head again. What kind of person did this make her? When everyone had a drink and a chair, Hermione finally got to her feet to open the meeting. At first, she was hardly comprehensible from nerves, and Draco took a grim satisfaction from that. He loved her, but it served her right for inviting so many people when he's specifically told her not to.
Well, you know, while you're here, Harry here had the idea.
She had to amend when Harry threw her a nasty look.
I had the idea that it might be good if people who wanted to study defense against the dark arts, and really study it, not the rubbish that Umbridge is doing with us, because nobody could call that defense against the dark arts.
"Hear, hear," called Goldstein, a Ravenclaw from their year, and that seemed to encourage Hermione.
"Well," she continued, "I thought it would be good if we, took matters into our own hands."
She looked sideways at Harry for a moment and resumed.
"And by that I mean learning how to defend ourselves properly, not just in theory, but doing the real spells."
"You want to pass your defense against the dark arts owls too, though, I bet," said Coroner, another Ravenclaw from their year. Draco rolled his eyes at the house cliché being fulfilled.
"Of course I do,"
Hermione answered at once.
"But more than that, I want to be properly trained in defense because...
She took a deep breath, and Draco was conflicted. He knew what was coming now, and he was not sure this was smart. Not in front of this many people, and not this publicly. But it was too late now.
"Because Lord Voldemort is back,"
Hermione finished. Draco, used to the name being said out loud by now, didn't flinch, but several others did. Chang's friend shrieked out loud and poured butterbeer over herself like a toddler.
"Well, that's the plan anyway,"
Hermione said.
"If you want to join us, we need to decide how we're going to..."
"Where's the proof you know who's back?" A Hufflepuff Draco recognized from the Quidditch pitch demanded rather rudely.
"Well, Dumbledore believes it,"
Hermione began. "You mean Dumbledore believes him?" the boy said, pointing at Harry. Draco's finger slipped to reach for his wand, anger pouring through him. "Definitely too many people on the invitation list." "Oh, you!" Weasley demanded, matching the Hufflepuff's tone 1-to-1. "Zachariah Smith, and I think we've got the right to know exactly what makes him say, you know who's back." "I'll tell you what you have a right to, Smith." Draco said smoothly. "And that is a nice and painless obliviate, if you don't shut your mouth right now. Then we can send you your merry way, and you can pretend none of this ever happened. Deal?"
"Draco!"
Hermione sighed. "Are you threatening me, Malfoy?" Smith ground out, flushing an angry, ugly purple. "Yes," Draco said simply. "What we are offering here is, quite frankly, a privilege. None of us have to do this. Harry doesn't have to do any of this. Harry doesn't have to answer any of your stupid questions. We could just study for ourselves and leave you all to die. What is it to us, really? So if you want to learn, you better mind your manners, or you're going home without any memories of this meeting. Good luck filling Umbridge in on something you don't remember happening." Draco was bluffing, of course. He knew the theory of memory charms, but he never in a million years could pull them off without a trace. But Smith didn't know that, and from the look on the Hufflepuff's face, the idea was intimidating enough to make him pause. There was a tense silence among the group, and then Harry's hand was on Draco's arm. "It's okay," he said quietly. Then he turned to the group with sharp eyes. "What makes me say you know who is back? I saw him. But Dumbledore told the whole school what happened last year, and if you didn't believe him, you won't believe me, and I'm not wasting an afternoon trying to convince anyone." It looked like Smith was about to say something else, but when Draco casually removed his wand from his pocket, eyeing him closely, he kept silent.
"So,"
Hermione said. Her voice was high and nervous again, the way it had been when she had started speaking at the beginning of the meeting.
"So, like I was saying, if you want to lend us some defense, then we need to work out how we're going to do it, how often we're going to meet, and where we're going to... Is it true?"
Bones, a Hufflepuff girl from their year, interrupted, eyes focused on Harry.
"That you can produce a Patronus?"
Murmurs followed her question, and everyone was looking at Harry again, clearly intrigued. "Yeah," Harry said, slightly defensive.
"A corporeal Patronus?"
the girl asked eagerly, making Harry pause. You don't know Madame Bones, do you?"
"She's my auntie." Bones smiled brightly. "She told me about your hearing. So, is it really true? You make a stag Patronus?"
"Yes." "Blimey, Harry," Lee Jordan, the Weasley twins' best friend, muttered, clearly impressed. "I never knew that." "Month-old Ron, not the spirited brand," said Fred, grinning at Harry. "She said you got enough attention as it was." "She's not wrong," Harry muttered. Several people laughed, and even Draco cracked a smile. He could tell that the mood was slowly shifting, and he couldn't help but feel slightly thankful towards Bones. He reckoned Hufflepuffs were good for some things, after all. People kept throwing questions at Harry then. Did he really kill that basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets, with that sword in Dumbledore's office, in his second year? Did he really save the Philosopher's Stone from you-know-who in his first year? And then Chang, of all people, pointed out what Harry had to face throughout the Triwizard Tournament, and Draco wanted to strangle her because she didn't get to say these things! Where had she been when Harry had to face all of it? She'd been with Diggory! Thank you very much. "Look," Harry spoke up at last, and the crowd around them fell silent. I don't want to sound like I'm trying to be modest or anything, but I had a lot of help with all that stuff." "Not with the dragon, you didn't," Corner interjected. "That was a seriously cool bit of flying." "Yeah, well..."
"And nobody helped you get rid of the Dementors last summer," said Bones.
"No," Harry amended. "No, okay, I know I did bits of it without help, but the point I'm trying to make is... Are you trying to weasel out of showing us any of this stuff?" Smith demanded, and the moment he'd spoken, his eyes widened, and he nervously glanced at Draco. "As an idea," Weasley groaned. "Why don't you shut your mouth?" "Well, we've all turned up to learn from him," Smith gulped happily, looking as if he was pressing on despite his better judgment. "And now he's telling us he can't really do any of it." "That's not what he said," snarled Fred. "Would you like us to clean out your ears for you?" George joined in, pulling some monstrosity from his back that had Smith flinch away from them instinctively. "Or any part of your body, really. We're not pussy when we stick this," said Fred.
"Yes, well,"
Hermione said hastily, bringing the attention back to herself before the situation escalated further. Pity. Draco had been rather enjoying Smith's squirming.
"Moving on. The point is, are we agreed we want to take lessons from Harry?"
It seemed like, miraculously, they were. What they were not agreed on, though, was basically anything else. Time, place, or even basic rules. After a long and at times borderline ridiculous discussion that caused Draco to almost hex Smith 2 more times, everybody had signed down their name on what served as a makeshift member list, which Draco assumed Hermione had somehow charmed to provide a magically binding contract, though she had not clearly stated that fact in front of everyone. He was going to have to check up with her later. And the group was on their merry way again, leaving it to the three of them to find them a time and place for their first meeting and to spread the word.
Well, I think that went quite well,
Hermione said happily as they left the pub, but when Draco looked at her pointedly, she let out a deep sigh.
Oh, come on, Draco!
What exactly were you on when you invited the Zachariah Smith persona? He inquired. Do I have to educate you about potion consumption, Hermione?
He overheard me talking to Annie and Hannah at the Hufflepuff table, and he seemed really interested,
Hermione said defensively.
What was I to do? But the more people, the better, Billy.
No! Draco contradicted rather sharply. More people make it dangerous, Hermione. Why do you insist on ignoring my warnings?
What's done is done, Draco, she shrugged. Just calm down and roll with it.
Just stay silent and save your reckless Gryffindor arses as always, you mean? Draco rumbled. One of these days I'll refuse to do exactly that, you know, and then good luck to you. You won't survive a day!
Well, I don't think we need to worry about Smith. Harry shrugged, sending Draco a smile. He might be a pain in the arse, but he's more than just a little afraid of you, if I may say so. Draco snorted.
Someone had to play the bad Slytherin, he suggested. He shrugged. I'm the only one who fits the role.
He was quiet for a moment, then he added,
He wasn't the only one I didn't like the look of, though. That girl Chang brought, for example, she clearly didn't want to be there. People like that are a risk. It can't hurt to threaten them a little. I don't care whether or not they like me, as long as they don't blab.
Speaking about Chang,
Hermione said, her eyes lighting up.
There's one good thing that came out of today, Harry.
What do you mean? Harry asked a little too quickly. Draco's heart fell.
Well, Hermione replied rather smugly, she just couldn't keep her eyes off you, could she?
Harry didn't answer, but he grinned at her, and Draco felt like he was going to throw up. This wasn't news, he reminded himself. He knew that Harry fancied Cho Chang, and he'd known as well that Harry's feelings for him were merely platonic. He should be happy for Harry, really, should his feelings finally be returned. He didn't want his friend to pine forever the way Draco was bound to do, right? One of them should be allowed to have a happy relationship, and it might as well be Harry, who had so much else denied in his life. Maybe one day Draco would be able to move on as well, seeing Harry settle down with someone else. Draco knew that, in his head. But his jealousy was singing a different kind of symphony, one of hate and fury against Cho Chang, who was vain and feeble and selfish, and who was taking Harry away from Draco when she didn't deserve him. Draco didn't talk much on the journey back to the castle, but none of the others seemed to notice.